The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
We're open line through till 1 o'clock today. Text 166 177. WhatsApp 166 177. You'll need to put 07624 in front of that. Put us into your contacts. Email studio@manxradio.com. Call 66 1368 for whatever's on your mind today. Lots of messages I didn't get to yesterday, so we'll go through those later on. And also, how lots of people have been saying, if the government is going to be subject to departments overspending, how do we get round that? How do you stop people? I mean, surely a budget is a budget, isn't it? You're told what your budget is and you work within that budget. But if a department's just overspend, what happens? Or was it ever thus? Have departments always overspent? It's just that we've only ever heard about it about now. Let's get to the lines now. David's on first. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy. Sorry, case number 2 is I went to see a person yesterday who I've known for 40-odd years. He's in Ward 6. I won't mention any names at all. But for this, I'll call him John, to name a particular person anyway, but it's not him, is where a person's in the hospital and doesn't have a home to go back to. How do we help that person when he doesn't have an accommodation address to go back to? Doesn't own a cooker, doesn't own a fridge, doesn't own anything at all, but needs a home or a flat.
Yeah.
So where are we? Got 2 now, haven't we? One's in Derby, and I hope I'm sure on day 1 when he went in there was checked out, he'll get all the help he can get. But he'll be in the same situation as the other guy is. And this guy's before him beside this Manx. Like I say, I've known him for about 30, 40 years. But he's fell off the rails.
Yeah.
And I told him that the other day when I was speaking to him for an hour. And the other thing I have a concern about is, where does social services come in? Who notifies them if he hasn't got any next of kin? I can't do everything for him because he's going to have to sign a form because I can't act on his behalf. And I know he'll get better once he gets out of hospital, back into the community and starts to, at 62, earn a living again. And where does his benefits go to at the moment? Because he's sick. He's been off sick for a little while now. Where does that? He's got no accommodation address. Does he have to say he's care of Ward 6?
Does the hospital have anything to say about it? Can they point him towards anybody? Well,
I did ask. There was a person that came when I was there. I did ask the person, could I sit and listen and talk? And help him out as much as I could on that. But my concern is, and I'm still investigating it a minute, because he's in there, and he may not be able to look after himself. He's got to ask him. People say you've got to get the person to ring us up and ask, and then we might get somebody to visit. But there's no guarantee that anybody would come up with the forms to say, A, I need housing, B, I need some support and help for the future to get me back on and get out of Ward 21.
Well, now, with obviously keeping everything confidential, but how far is he away from coming out of hospital?
I would say a couple of 3 or 4 weeks. Once he's the doctors, they were great. 21 patients in Ward 6. I didn't realise it was a ward that you have to press a button to get into, say who you are, who you're going to visit and stuff like that, and you have to press a button to get out. It reminded me of the old Glenside days, do you know what I mean? Which brings me to another point. There must be accommodation out there, and I've still yet to get a reply from the number which said, if you're stuck or you're desperate, people can help. And I must say, the Salvation Army, bob on, but they're in the same particular boat too. Unless they get permission or written permission from the person to act on his behalf, they can't do a lot. And that's what worries me a little bit, where somebody says, oh, has given up and said, look, I'm not long for this place, dig a hole and bury me. We don't want that, do we?
Well, we're supposed to have safety nets for this situation because, as you say, life is like that. Sometimes people do fall by the wayside. It was said to me years ago, actually by a Salvationist, that, the highest managing director anywhere is only 2 bad decisions away from the gutter.
Yeah. You're right on that, and it just worries me. Not about the other things that are happening in the hospital as such, too. It's the bits that are outside of it, where he can't get home. He won't be able to get home because he's got no accommodation. And that's the worrying thing. When we used to have a bail hostel, he's done nothing wrong. I'll just say that. He's done nothing wrong at all. He's just living his life, and his life's gone on top of him. But anyway,
all right.
Surely somebody out there in social services would come back on and said, tell Mr. Quirk we just need his where he's got a telephone. I can ring him in the hospital, and somebody will come and visit and guide him through a tortuous period.
Well, if anybody knows this, if this is sounding familiar to anybody in authority or anybody who's been through something like this, if they know the way out of this, then by all means do get in touch.
Lovely. Cheers, mate.
Thanks. Good to hear from you. Thank you for that. Let's go to John, who's with us now on Mannin Line. Hi, John.
Hi, Andy. The 20,000 new residents, and I didn't catch the other day how many visitors we're going to get by 2034.
Well, they said they want 500,000 every year.
Yeah, they're living in cloud cuckoo land. I think the only way they'll get them here is to employ press gangs to go around the UK to bring them over. Anyway, just one thing. I was going through my late father's papers, and I found a cutting that he'd cut out of the paper, 1980, headed, "Are we getting visitors here under false pretenses?" It's too long to read out, but I'll send you a copy and you can read it and see what you think.
Okay.
It's dated 1980, and to be honest with you, it could have been written yesterday because exactly the same things apply. But I'll get a copy to you and you can see what you think.
All right, appreciate that.
Okay.
Good to hear from you. Thank you, John. It's 14 minutes now before 12 on Mannin Line today. There was a note in the other day when the people from Visit Isle of Man and Destination First were here. Sarah Maltby, MHK, was here. Ranald Caldwell and Deborah Heather. And it was regarding the San Diego Maritime Museum. This has been brought up before. Remember, San Diego has a very strong connection with the Isle of Man, being the Star of India. That iconic, white, beautiful ship that is anchored in San Diego. And still, it's a going concern. It still sails. What does the panel think about doing a deal with the San Diego Maritime Museum for visitors going on the Star of India entrance tickets, whereby US visitors there who hand in the ticket at the sea terminal visitor clerk can get, let's just say, $200 cash back, thereby generating high-spending US visitors to the Isle of Man. What do they think? Can they do that? Is there anything? I'm guessing not at the moment. However, there are many, many Manx connections, and we know this all over the world. In the 19th century, 40% of the lead mined in the British Isles came from the Isle of Man. There were the lead barons on the Isle of Man were very, very powerful, and there were many miners. And of course, when all that dried up, when the minerals were exhausted, the miners went here, there, and everywhere, including to Pennsylvania. Obviously, that's where the Cleveland Medal comes from. So all the coal mines in Pennsylvania, the gold mines in California, the gold mines in South Africa, the gold mines in Victoria in southern Australia. The gold mining town of Ballarat has a very strong Manx connection. So is this something that we can work with? And if so, who would do it? just ideas, really. And Randall Caldwell was saying basically they're spreading the tent very wide now, trying to get everybody in to talk about how we can all work together to give a better offering for tourists. Text, email, call, WhatsApp. Have you been to see the Star of India? Here's Bonzo on now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hi there, yes. Following on from what David was saying, and also the things we've been seeing in the Manx Independent today on the front page about the case of the homeless person in prison. Well, this is just the culmination, really, of years of denial of there being a homeless problem, a social care problem, or any problem of that sort of nature at all, because that would be deemed to be talking down the Isle of Man, showing us up, and we only want to portray this polished image of people driving around in nice cars and the streets being paved with gold. Also, the product of, well, I suppose one could say, since 2008 and the VAT shock, the product of continual underfunding, and using that, finding ways to address that, which means that various parts of the system, which would normally all fit together and all talk to each other, in order to resolve the problems of someone like the person that David was describing in Nobles, or the person who is in prison at the moment, for want of anywhere else to go, those things would have been able to be relatively simply sorted out. But now we have everything decoupled at arm's length, so that I think social services are now part of Manx Care, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right. So social services is part of Manx Care, which is, of course, an arm's length organisation, at arm's length from Department of Health and Social Care. So what kind of joined up thing can there be? And, of course, one of the key elements about these kind of things are Social Security benefits from the Treasury. And the Treasury, of course, can't talk really to Manx Care. Manx Care can't talk to the Treasury, can't talk to Department of Health and Social Care. So social services, as part of Manx Care, end up as piggy in the middle, trying desperately to make things happen.
But surely they know that I mean, that doesn't help the end product, does it? That's just process.
Yes, but it's also process that saves money, because you're not then spending money on the people who are actually needing the money to be spent upon them. Well, that's the theory anyway, because what the result is that then people go through all sorts of processes, and all the back and forth and such just ends up costing the government overall far more money, when things could be sorted out relatively simply by allowing essentially social services to do their job, rather than drowning in a sea of procedurals and KPIs and such. From what I gather, social services are just about functioning. And it won't take very much to tip them over the edge. And I think this actually shows just what a challenge social services are operating under.
So, which politician should be which politician should be banging the drum for this?
Well, there you have an issue, because of course the responsibilities are so divided. So there's not one politician who's clearly responsible. So you've got Treasury, or you've got the member for Social Security for Treasury, who'd be one person. Then you'd have Laurie Hooper, DHSC, another person. Then you have the responsibilities, under the remit of Theresa Cope and other people in ensuring that the social services bit of Manx Care has the resources that it needs, because it's been given the budget for it. But although, well, then again, of course, that budget may be insufficient. So it's a complex problem with unfortunate individuals just falling between the stools and nothing seemingly willing to be done about it by the people who could actually sort of put paths between the stools so they didn't fall between them. And it's not for want of social services trying. Social services, as I say, would seem to be here, the piggy in the middle.
But I mean, this is surely. I mean, getting this right is a measure of our society, as you say. We may appear outside as an island full of eccentric millionaires, but we are real people.
Oh, indeed. Oh, indeed so. But that doesn't really fit the narrative, does it?
Okay.
It's like having food banks on the island. Oh dear, do we have one of those? Didn't realise.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate it, Bonzo. Thanks for calling today.
Okay then, cheers. Bye.
Good to hear from you. We got a WhatsApp in from Julie Edge, MHK, who says Nobles Hospital has its own social workers who should be able to help with this. Thank you, Julie. Good to hear from you. Viv's with us now. Hello, Viv.
Hello. This isn't my problem. This is somebody else's problem. Social services get in touch with people and say, we will phone you. When? They never do because they run out of time. It's the same if they're coming to see you. Oh, we can't get there. I have a friend this has happened to for the last fortnight. In fact, this week, they said, we will phone you either Monday or Tuesday. Both days have gone, and she has never yet been phoned. Now, this is no way to run a system. And I know that they are busy, and I'm not doing anything about that, but please don't make promises you can't fulfill.
Okay, and the lady herself, obviously keep everything confidential, but what sort of help does she need, Vivian?
It's her husband. He's in a nursing home, and she needs help. But he's been ill for years, and I don't think she's more than twice ever seen a social worker.
Right.
Are you following me? It's a case of there's no support there for people. Without friends, she would be absolutely lost. Because she doesn't have her own family. She has very good nieces and all the rest of it. Don't get me wrong there. But they, as a couple, don't have a family.
Okay. I just think it's very bad. They want to get their act together and sort out how they are helping people. Okay, right. Well, Vivian, again, keep everything confidential, but do keep us informed of what the situation is with the lady. It would be interesting to see how long it takes and what sort of help she does actually get in the end.
She's not hoping for much because, fortunately, she's got good friends. But that's not the point. It's not helping with the situation at all. Okay.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Vivian.
Okay. Bye.
All right. 12:25 it is. It's difficult not to despair when things like this happen. We have no doubt that social services do a fantastic job. However, as Bonzo said, some people do fall between the cracks. Some people don't get the help. It may be that some people are diffident, aren't confident enough to keep on phoning or to make a fuss about it, and then they just slide back into the darkness. So how do we do this? Get Housing Matters, says WhatsApper 531. Get Housing Matters. They'll go and get his signatures and get in touch via a social worker. Thanks also to, this is 659, regarding the man in hospital. He should be given a social worker in hospital if the staff are aware of his situation. I was in a queue of 20 cars stuck behind cyclists at Glenduff. There were 2 cyclists there. Thanks for the photo, Big John in Ramsey. They must show consideration and cycle in single file. Thanks also to... Pauline sent me an interesting photo, and it was a photo of a van on the promenade in Douglas. And it's a van. We were following this van the other day, wondered if it was something to do with the prom wall. And it's a reinforcement group, concrete reinforcement specialists. Interestingly, it's got an 07624 Manx mobile on it, but not a Manx email address, and a UK plate. How funny. I wonder if they're the people doing the war. Manx cares that this is a disgrace, reducing 5 operations, says Dave, per week. Some of us have paid all our life for help when we get older. We've already paid. They've had our cash. Manx Care was going to save us money when it was formed. Part of the £16 million deficit is probably the pay rise, although very much deserved, was more than planned. We need to get rid of some pen pusher management, says Dave. That's Dave's word. Well, they were hemmed in, really, on that wage rise. And remember, personnel costs take up a huge part of this. And certainly, obviously, if junior doctors are getting a big thumping increase in the UK, that will ripple through to over here, because again, they keep telling us there's a shortage of professionals, and professionals will go where, I mean, obviously, standard of living and everything and the standard of the job is something, but they'll go where they can get well paid. Thanks, H. 768. I agree about the lack of support and information available to families of patients. Thanks for that. I went for a routine scan yesterday, says Sue. The last time I had one was at Westmoreland Road in Douglas. I was surprised that this one is at Ramsey Cottage Hospital. No problem for me. I don't know Ramsey that well, but a friend gave me directions. Yes, Cottage Hospital can be difficult to get to if you don't know where you're going. Kind of going back on yourself. When I got to Ramsey via Lazare Road, I was shocked at the lack of signposting. Nothing that I could see at the traffic lights and nothing on the road towards it. Then a tiny red arrow labelled injury unit pointing to the right turn. No mention of the name until you get to the car park. Luckily, my directions were accurate, but surely if the unit's going to be used more, there needs to be obvious signposting before all the turns and certainly at the traffic lights, says Sue. Charlie's on now. Hello, Charlie.
You mentioned social workers. My wife has been under a social worker for a number of years with an illness. She had to go into a home in November. Within 3 weeks of going in the home, the social worker contacted me and said, well, now your wife's in a home. There's no need for me to be involved. I'm signing her off my books.
And that was that?
That was that. I've never received anything from the government social-wise. As I said on a previous programme, I tried to get a reduced road tax for my disabled vehicle for her. And because I wasn't on benefits, I wasn't interested. I wasn't entitled. But the social services and the Manx Care, we were better off with the Alman Health Service. We knew where we were there.
I mean, how do you feel about this, Charlie?
I'm disgusted. My wife's never drawn the dole. I've never drawn the dole. And when you get ill at the later ages, they just shove you on the scrap heap. They couldn't give a hoot.
But surely this is not... We don't expect this sort of thing, do we?
No. Well, my wife needs medical care 24 hours now. £5,576 a month. I applied for the Markle House. Is there any benefits? I'm entitled to the maximum benefit, £110 a week.
5,000, how much a month?
£5,570 a month.
And you get £400 back?
440.
Wow.
And I've paid 50 years of stamps and insurance. My wife has paid 50 years stamps and insurance. Now, I've heard from a disgruntled ex-retired civil servant, the average civil servant, depending on what grade you're on, but the civil servants on £70,000 a year, two-thirds their salary, pension, and most of them are just above 40 to 50,000. No wonder there's a black hole in government if they're paying them sort of pensions to our employees. We don't work for them. Our taxes, they work for us.
What would you like to see happen, Charlie?
Well, after I spoke to the minister last week, I was up north on Saturday, and I've seen quite a few friends. And I tell you what, northwest of the island, MHKs are coming in for a hammer in this next election, because after the farce of Derby, and basically made out they didn't know what was going on. I don't know. The thing is, you work 50 years. What I signed up to in the 60s is not what I'm sorting out now.
Okay. Charlie, thanks for calling today.
Okay. Bye.
Good to hear from you. 28 minutes before 1. If you've got any thoughts on this, it'd be interesting to see what your perspective is of this. As Charlie said, didn't sign up for this, didn't think it was going to be like this. But obviously, life presents us with challenges, and as you heard, Charlie is rising to that particular challenge. It's not what he expected, but it's what he's got. What do you think? Barry dropped a note in, 786. Could the flats on Lord Street not be made usable for homeless? And the guy who was sent to jail, he had nowhere to live because Lord Street flats are going to sit there unused. And if a few flats could be made usable, it's got to help somebody, says Barry. The gentleman in hospital with no accommodation, the ward staff can refer him to social services, be able to bring with them all the required forms, maybe not on the first visit, but they will bring them. There's also a hospital social worker who ought to be involved. If he has no accommodation when he's ready for discharge, they'll move him to Martin Ward in the Ramsey Cottage Hospital. Thank you for that. It's a laugh, says Kelly. The government want all these new visitors, but they're wanting to scrap the things that we have that make us different. The horse trams, the electric trams, the steam trains, says Kelly. I don't think they're getting rid of the steam trains. There's always that threat in the background of the Laxey to Ramsey section of the electric railway. And the horse trams? Well, this is the home of the halfway horse tram, remember?
Hi, I'm Davey Todd, and I want to wish Manx Radio a happy 60th birthday.
When it comes to building and DIY supplies, shop where the professionals shop. Haldane Fisher for concrete blocks to roof trusses, timber to tiles, doors to panel pins, boilers to bathrooms, drainage to guttering, and everything in between. Get the job done with the right products from Haldane Fisher. Visit our stores in Douglas and Ramsey, or find us online on Facebook. Proud to be on Island.
Feel right at home with Haldane Fisher.
Spectrum Windows. If your house needs a new look and your windows let in rain,
keep those cold breezes out and make it look like new again.
Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Quality through and through. Great work guaranteed to you. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Spectrum Windows. One life, gotta lift it up.
Back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain. At Align for Life Spine and Posture Clinic, we've been helping Manx residents for 15 years with our holistic, evidence-based care and therapies. Plus, we're now open Saturdays to make it even easier to see us. Visit our brand new website at alignforlife.com or find us on Facebook for opening hours and more information. Align for Life, 15 years serving the community of the Isle of Man.
After another busy spell on the road, FC Isle of Man return home this weekend with a mouth-watering fixture against the current top dogs in the NWCFL Premier Division. League leaders Ramsbottom United make the visit to the Bowl this Saturday to face an informed Ravens side battling away for the promotion playoff spots. Join me, Rob Pritchard and Tony Mepham for FC Isle of Man versus Ramsbottom United, kicking off at 6 p.m. this Saturday. Manx Radio will be bringing you full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. Live coverage of FC Isle of Man on Manx Radio is supported by Selton, investing in our community.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
I'd like to start a new discussion, not me, but Texter 802. I'd like to start a new discussion about mobile phones and the number of car drivers who every day use their phone while at the wheel. This whilst driving, I look through my rear view mirror to see the driver behind me driving slowly while texting. texting. I walk every day to work, and every day without fail I see drivers on their phones while waiting in the traffic. Well, you're not supposed to do it, actually. Technically, it's illegal. If you're going to use your phone and you haven't got a hands-free and one that goes through to the car, you're supposed to pull over. Otherwise, you can get nicked and get points on your license. So, and also it brings in money because you can get fined. So surely the police, the authorities will be looking at doing this. Of course, it only needs one person to be involved in a very bad accident, and everybody says, oh, what a shame, isn't it a pity? But you aren't supposed to use it. And really, you're not going to lose that much time pulling over to the side of the road on the Isle of Man, are you? Any thoughts? Thanks also to, I agree about the lack of support and information available to families of patients, says H. Speaking with multiple parents with children in primary schools, they've all reported the same concern from their children. The portion sizes have reduced massively following the recent rise in school meals. Is this right? Have you got a child at school? In some cases, children are having to share their packed lunches with students on free dinners because they're hungry. Why are the children suffering due to the government's incompetence? I just read today they've bailed out FC Isle of Man. They need to get their priorities sorted, and as soon as possible. Says, I don't think they bailed out FC Isle of Man. I think they give FC Isle of Man some help on renting the bowl. And obviously FC Isle of Man bring lots and lots of money to the Isle of Man, so it's a kind of quid pro quo where that's concerned. However, have portion sizes decreased? Can you tell me that? If Charlie's wife's in a nursing home, says 535, and requires round-the-clock nursing care, they're entitled to a nursing care allowance and also a higher rate of attendance allowance. The manager of the home should have all the forms, says L. Hey, what a fantastic achievement to Sir Mark Cavendish. Sir Mark. Sir Manx Missile got knighted yesterday. Something positive. Isn't that fantastic? Hasn't Cav done really well with that? By the way, it should be the hospital social worker dealing with the person we were talking about earlier. He may be eligible for residential care, says Val. On Tuesday, there was a traffic jam of 20 cars behind a cyclist at the Hawthorne at 4:30 p.m. Why can't they pull into the car park and let the traffic pass, says Val. Here's Mark with us now. Hello, Mark.
Yeah, hi, Andy. I was just listening to some of the callers before, and it just sort of, struck a nerve. And I think most people feel like this is just the ever-growing size of government. And this is not about frontline workers, but I just did a bit of Google research before, and I think last year, towards the end of 2023, Manx Radio ran a news story saying in the last 7 years, the government headcount, and that could be frontline workers, it could also be backroom, increased by 700 people, which I think is about 15% or something of the total work? I mean, it's a huge number anyway.
Yeah.
And in 7 years, that's what, if you say an average salary is 50,000, say, based on the information your previous caller gave, that's 35 million increase in headcount alone. And it just seemed, what I find remarkable is that in Tynwald, no one seems to be talking about how do we make the government more efficient in terms of headcount. Now, if we are going to have 100,000 people coming, 100,000 population by, I can't remember the date, was it 2035 or something, which Alpha is trying to get?
Yeah, the extra 15,000, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to have, the government's got to be more efficient because you're not going to be able to support that amount of people. But I don't hear anything from any of the MHKs talking about we're going to cap or we're going to reduce the headcount, we're going to use artificial intelligence to reduce the amount of administration, we're going to look for synergies. And it just still seems to be department by department by department by department making their own separate decisions with no coordination. And it just seems, it seems to me, my gut feeling is it's out of control. And again, this is not directed towards frontline workers, but I think we all come across duplications in administration, having to fill in 5 or 6 forms of different types of things when the government has that information already, and surely there's efficiencies. I just find that worrying, and I don't think any of the MHKs have got to grip with it, Andy, really.
Well, and I mean, do you think this kind of fosters a disconnect between politicians and the public? Because remember, at the last election, you couldn't move for politicians or candidates wanting transparency in government.
Absolutely. And the thing which really struck a nerve as well is do you remember that dashboard the government created with all the statistics about how the government's performing, how the economy is performing, how the amount of job vacancies on the Isle of Man, the amount of people employed? On that dashboard, surely the government should say, this is the amount of people the government actually employ in administrative services and frontline services. So we as the population can say, OK, that seems reasonable. Or, hang on, why has the government had a 20% increase in the amount of backroom administration? There is no transparency, Andy. And I think most people are getting frustrated with it, especially when they're starting to cut frontline services and there's no transparency on what the growth of the backroom or the administration is. And this is not about reducing jobs. This is not just being ruthless. This is about having a target. So, OK, X amount of people are retiring in the next 5 or 10 years. What can we do not to replace that person and use technology to support it? I think if they went about it in that way, people would respect it. But at the moment, there's no roadmap, I don't think.
Well, and I think, as you say, this is not personal. This is not about the people who do the jobs, and it would be wrong of anybody to kind of perceive it as that. Everybody's concerned about the size of government. We're not against the people who do the jobs, but the strategy itself seems to be flawed.
Exactly, and I don't think anyone would say we've got to, sack people. It's not about that. It's having a roadmap, and if you could say, X amount of people are retiring, we're not going to replace that position. We're going to try to use, let's say, AI, or we're going to use technology or streamline efficiencies. That's the way we're going to do it. That's the roadmap the government need to be doing to get us, the public, on board, and they're not doing it. And it just, I think there is a disconnect, and there's a lack of transparency in this area. And I think they're still operating like government did 15 or 20 years ago, when people didn't have access to information. Everybody has access to information now, and they just need to sort of, improve.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for your point.
Cheers, Andy.
Take care. 17 minutes before 1. Let me take you back to 1984. The Isle of Man, by common consent, was up the creek with a damaged paddle. Tourism had fallen off a cliff after the millennium year, 1979. We had nearly 2,000 people out of work and about £1 million in reserves. We were paying benefits, really, from month to month. Chief Minister Miles Walker, then Miles, now Sir Miles, we were absolutely in it. And we got out of it by using wit, ingenuity, hard work and a smiling face. And we've done that before. So there's no reason why we can't do it again. There's no reason why we can't move forward. It's just how we do it and who wants to do it. You heard yesterday former Policy and Reform Minister Chris Robershaw saying he put forward a reform policy and it was rejected by Comyn because, well, you heard what he said about certain ministers. How do we do it? Who's going to do it? It needs to be done. Treasury Minister Alex Allinson told Manx Radio he believes government departments do have an incentive to stay within their budget. That's despite a number of them, as well as arm's length Manx Care, predicted to record overspends in the current financial year. It comes as 2 MHKs call for a Tynwald member to be appointed to shadow the Manx Care Board as part of efforts to reform healthcare. Here's the Treasury Minister.
Andrew Smith is seconding a Tynwald motion very much in his capacity as a backbencher. He discussed the motion with me, and I made it quite clear that any motions he brings need to separate themselves from the actions and opinions of the Treasury Board.
Departments do often overspend, and then the relevant minister returns to Tynwald to ask for more, which is often always approved. While it wouldn't be fair to say that those managing the health finances are intentionally overspending, do you think there's a lack of real incentive for them to ensure that they do stay within budget?
No, I think that incentive is always there. I think both Manx Care and the Department of Health and Social Care recognise the significant budget uplift that they were given in February's budget, but also the significant pressures on that budget that they face. In terms of the overspend, we will be publishing the first quarter management accounts that show a £2.8 million overspend as we speak, which is projected to grow, but I know that projection is not taking into account the significant cost improvements that have already been started by Manx Care and initiated with the department's assistance.
We know that reserves aren't as healthy as they once were. Will there ever come a point where Treasury and Tynwald members collectively decide to take a tougher stance and say, no, enough is enough?
Treasury and Tynwald have actually had a much tougher stance in terms of departmental overspends when these haven't been accounted for. What we saw back in February this year was a significant overspend by a number of departments that was reluctantly agreed for by Tynwald in terms of a supplementary vote, because it was recognised that with the high inflation figures we've seen over the last 2 years and increased wage demands we've seen as well, that increased money does have a responsibility with it that has to be accounted for properly, and that's what Treasury and Tynwald will be doing.
There's the Treasury Minister.
It's a tough time for businesses. Not sure what to do to turn things around? Let Nicola Bowker & Co. guide you through. We've helped hundreds of businesses to success. Accountants and tax advisors to businesses on the Isle of Man.
Construction waste today.
Tells recycle for another day.
A builder skip or two.
Tells Skips will bring to you.
Need quality Type 1 stone for your building or contracting job? Then contact Tells with no minimum order for collection or delivery. Call 677 137. Visit Tells Limited in Snugborough or find Tells Limited on Facebook.
Skips are what they do.
We're their guys that hire one to you.
Call Tells Skips today.
677 137.
Athol Garage in Ballasalla is more than a Nissan authorised repair centre. Their team of highly factory-trained and experienced technicians will service and repair any make and model, with dedicated aftercare too. With Athol, you get a competitive fixed-price menu and a courtesy car if needed. Pity this driver didn't know that.
Oh, great! I told you to go to Athol!
Athol, a garage to swear by, not swear at. Book now at athol.im or call the A-Team, 820082.
The Musicals in Concert returns to the Royal Hall Villa Marina, Sunday 13th of October, presented by Stage Ed, featuring classic songs from the world's greatest musicals in a gala performance by stars from the London stage. The Musicals in Concert, Sunday 13th October at the Villa Marina. Book now at villagaiety.com or on 600 555 with Zedra Isle of Man and supported by your nation station, Manx Radio.
Coming up, we have another winning weekend here on Manx Radio, and this time we're giving you the chance to win a £100 fuel voucher from Manx Petroleum. You can visit their filling stations across the island, and remember to check your oil tank early this autumn and winter. To win, all you need to do is listen out for our winning question, which we'll ask on air right across the weekend. And once you've heard it, text your answer to 166 177. Make this your winning weekend with Manx Petroleum and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
10 to 1, thanks for dropping by today. Good to hear from you. Lots of messages and WhatsApps. I regularly see lorry drivers using their phones while driving, says 780. There are one-bedroom bungalows available at Ballacob Close in Ballaugh that have been empty for over 5 years, says 375. Is that right? Attendance allowance makes no difference to the fee cost to the patient. It just goes straight to the care home, says Sue. Is there any wonder there's little to do for visitors? Stopping the bus to Craignish isn't the best way to encourage tourists, says D and S. It sends out a message, doesn't it? I don't quite know what the message is. If you can see somebody behind texting in the car, then if you can see someone texting in the car behind someone is travelling way too close. I think they should be stopped, says Des. Government shoves the green agenda down our throats. In fact, the greenest form of public transport is the horse tramway. So let's complete it, says Martin. They never answer that, to be quite honest. Here's a note in that says, if some of our big gaming and finance firms are considering relocating back to the UK or abroad due to regulations now bringing to put them here. If it is more regulatory in London now than here, it's about time our government told the UK to go away, get our act back in order to keep it here before it's too late. Says 223. The note in that just says, one afternoon from the vantage point at the back of a public service vehicle, a bus, I noted 20 drivers using mobile phones at the wheel. I usually spot a few a week. But on a busy road here in Douglas, I heard Charlie say, what about the whopping pension costs? When I was in DEFA, by the way, I wasn't fired. I was rehired, and I had to put up with a lot of rubbish. Thanks also to having a little think about this, as there's a person looking in their rearview mirror long enough to determine what the car behind is doing isn't concentrating on the road ahead. So you get it both ways, don't you? Somebody said, well, what are they doing in the Channel Islands? If we're going to reform Manx Care and they want more money, what happens there? Actually, it's quite appropriate because Guernsey started some new charges on the 1st of October this year. Adults attending the emergency department in Guernsey pay £100 for advice and minor treatment or £250 for extensive treatment. Cancer patients and visitors from Jersey and the UK get it free. I bet they're happy about that. Children under 18 pay £25. Obviously, if you've been to Jersey, you have to pay for a doctor's appointment in Jersey. We get lots of things free here. Is it time to look at that again, or is that a kind of unmentionable? If you have any thoughts on it, then do get in touch. Manx Care proposed cutting NHS ops. Why have they still not reinstated the private ward to bring in some income and give people an option to NHS lists? And also, remember, there are lots of people on the Isle of Man who have private healthcare as part of their salary package. At the moment, there may be private consultations on the Isle of Man, but there is no private ward. Nobles Hospital employs social workers for the elderly. They should be able to assess the gentleman for accommodation. So we hope what David has reported earlier on gets sorted out. Bonzo's correct, says this correspondent, underfunding. So what do we fund? Is it £40 million on wind turbines or £40 million on social health care? Well, it's easy to say that. They're just not the same budget. So swashing money around inside government is easier said than done. But we take the point. My husband is a paraplegic and a wheelchair dependent. He doesn't travel now, but he may be able to in future. I saw a post on Facebook. Somebody's slating the steam packet saying they wonder how much they'll be charged for a future booking. It was for 2 adults, 2 motorcycles, plus disabled access room. I'm assuming one of the bike riders isn't in a wheelchair. I emailed the steam packet and asked why wheelchair accessible rooms are being sold to non-wheelchair users. The doorways are wider, making access easier. They always have a waiting list for cabins, so why not keep those for wheelchair dependent passengers? And if there's none on board, they can sell them off as they're departing port. But I haven't heard back from them. Have you been involved in anything like that? Still getting messages about these cyber security things. I had a couple of emails in first thing this morning asking me to press this and press that, talking about updating Manx government software. Complete rubbish. And if you get any, part of the hint is to just click on the sender's email address and you'll see it's complete gobbledygook. So nothing there. We still haven't heard, by the way, from Bill Dell whether anybody's taken those 13 large bags full of used cat litter. Did you hear about this the other day? Somebody's left 13 large bags full of used cat litter. I know you're eating, but I'm sorry. left in one of Beachbody's bins in Andres, Smale. Somebody left them there. Now, Bill has taken them out and put them to the side. Please go and take them away. Whoever it is, most cat people, in fact, the vast majority of cat people, are absolutely hygienic and spotless. But we have one Mucky Herbert who has done this, and it would be nice if you take them away, because they're being left there for you to take away. Beachbody's bins are not for household rubbish, therefore things like plastic on the beach. Bill's going to be in a few weeks' time talking about plastic on the beach. You may remember he was on live from the Royal Show talking about the damage that plastic does and where it comes from, particularly on the Isle of Man. Plastic that washes down the drains and the storm drains and then out into the sea. My wife had a doctor's appointment this morning. The doctor tried to prescribe an ointment, as he has done for somebody else 2 weeks ago. He was unable to find the ointment on the Manx Care system. On investigation, was told the ointment is no longer available. It's too expensive for Manx Care. Are we downgrading our standards to try to satisfy budgetary constraints? It's not easy, but I'm sure it's not insurmountable. Oh, thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today. Alex is on duty on Mannin Line tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.